So in this video we're going to go over GBO2's damage formula. We're going to go over the relative cost and value of each custom part that pertains to the damage formula. And then we're going to go over an overall ranking for all of the parts. So this is the GM Kai. He's got 8% in every single defense stat, and he's the default target for the lowest cost possible in training mode. But the significance here is that all of his defense stats match, and they're all 8. So presumably, this means 8% of the damage you deal to him gets removed. This is the regular OG Gundam, who is also a training mode target, also has all matching defense, and is a general, so we don't have to worry about things like the bonus that generals get versus raids, or that raids get versus supports, or that supports get versus generals, the whole rock, paper, scissors triangle. That bonus is its own thing, and I'm going to avoid that. But 15 in every defense stat. He also has matching damage stats too, 20 in every damage stat, which should mean he does a fifth more damage. But we're also going to look at the power on his beam rifle, because this is roughly equal to the damage you're going to be doing. He has 1575 power on his beam rifle. He's getting a 20% bonus, so that's plus another fifth. This number ends in 5, so I know it's divisible by 5. Let me get a calculator out here now. Sorry for the mic popping. 1575 divided by 5 is 315, so plus the original 1575 equals, so this should be 1890 damage, right? Because he's doing 20% more than he has, so if he has 120% of 1575, that equals 1890 damage. Now, we also know that the target we were going to shoot had 8% defense in every stat. So we're going to lower this by 8%. So 100% is 100%, and 8% less is 92%. So we're going to multiply 1890 by 0.92, and that should be 1738.8. So about 1739 damage is what we expect to get when we shoot our GM Kai. Now, if we instead shoot another Gundam who's going to have 15 in every stat, let me do the math again. Instead of doing 92% of the damage, which would be minus 8%, we're going to be doing, do math in your head, 0.85. So he should be doing, 85 would be 15 less than 100% damage, so 0.85 would be 1606.5 damage. So since this ends on a 0.5, we also get to see if the game rounds up or down or not. So let's go check. 1738. 1606, exactly as expected. So there are parts like Overtune Ranged, which add 10% damage. And this is a true 10% instead of just increasing the damage bonus you have by another 10. So like if you have 50 on the stat page, this means you're getting 50% damage bonus, but if you add 10% to this, as in a true 10%, instead of just going to 60, you're going to 65, because 50 damage plus the 100 base damage is 150 damage, then 150 damage plus 10% of itself, which is 150 over 10, is going to be, here, let me get a red pen. Cross out the zeros. This is a 1 in the denominator, so we can cross that out too. If you have a 50 attack character and you equip a true 10% damage bonus, this is the same as equipping a plus 15 damage part, which would get you 165 damage. Heavy armor part works like a regular defense part, but the Overtune armors do not. I don't remember how much damage they actually remove. We'll say it's minus 10%. They are like overtuned ranged or overtuned melee. They remove stuff outside of the equation, so they actually get worse the more defense you have. So, like, if you, let's say, have 0% defense, you're taking 100% of the damage. There aren't any characters that are like this, but let's just say there are. And you remove 10%, you are removing 10 damage. But if you are already blocking 50% of the damage and you're removing 10% of what remains, well, now that's half as much remaining, so that's half as much removed by your percentage. So now it's only worth 5. And that's why those parts, they might have a niche at really low level, but I kind of doubt it. So this is our level 4 assault gun tank. It's a support, so I'm going to have to go find a support character to shoot. But we have a base 150 ranged strength and an overtune ranged part, which is going to be adding 10% ranged damage since we're a level 4 character. We also have this alternative loadout, which has plus 15 ranged strength instead, which should do the same amount of damage. Because 50 ranged strength plus the 100 base is 150 ranged strength, plus 10% from overtune range should be plus 15 more. 150 plus 15 is 165 or 65 ranged strength. 3141, 3141, exact same damage. An easier way to look at this might be the Gyan, because the Gyan has 0 ranged strength. So that means our overtune ranged is going to be adding exactly 10% to no more than 100% range damage, setting it equal to a plus 10 ranged strength EFP. We can see I do 110 to the GM Kai and 179 to this Zaku commander. If I switch my parts around, I still do 110 to the GM Kai. Oops. And I still do 179 to this Zaku commander. So to summarize thus far, if you ever want to figure out how much overtune ranged is adding to your character, you just draw a 1 in front of the number, move the decimal over a spot, and then this is how much is being added. For melee strength, it's the same, but the melee part adds 12% instead of 10% at level 4. But the significance of being able to convert damages to percentages is it lets us start weighing damage parts against defense parts and health parts. So if you ever compare enhanced firing programs to strengthened frame parts, you'll see that the level 1s both cost 1 long range slot, and that this increases strength by 2, whereas this is HP by 200. And just the same, if we were to look at the level 2 part, it's a 3-point cost for 5, as opposed to this, which is a 3-point cost for 500. It's the same proportions, just this guy has 2 more zeros. Level 3s, kind of the same. The strengthened frame has 1 more medium range slot for the cost. The firing program is still just long ranged slots instead, but the same total slot cost. This level 3 is also notably the same as a level 1 and a level 2 combined, just saves you part space. But basically the idea is that 100 HP has the same cost as 1 point of damage. I want to emphasize that cost and value are not the same thing. This is a very common fallacy, but let's say we have some sticks, right? We got 8 sticks. They're all 1 foot long each. And we have to make either a square or a rectangle out of these sticks, and we're supposed to maximize the area of this rectangle. The number of sticks we have is the cost, but what we want is the area, so the area is the value. So let's say we got 2 ways to set this up, right? We've got a perfect square where each side is 2 sticks long for 8 sticks total, or we can do this rectangle where one side is 1 stick long, another side is 3 sticks long, so that the whole rectangle is again 8 sticks long. This has an area of 4. This has an area of 3 because this is 2 times 2 is 4, this is 1 times 3 is 3. This making these numbers equal is generally what's going to get you the most value if, say, one of these axes is your health and the other one of these axes is your damage, thus making the area your damage per life. If you have twice the health, well, that means you do twice as much shooting before you die, presumably. There are, contextual exceptions, like if you have 1 point of health and you double it to 2 points of health, you're not really going to live twice as long because no one is doing 1 point of damage at a time. But generally speaking, if you're playing scratch for scratch, you want to make your health and damage proportional to one another. My Zaku Flipper is a good example of this. I know that the HP number is inflated by 2 more zeros compared to the ranged strength number. I know this character doesn't really do much melee damage, even though his downswing's pretty good. But I also know that I need to put a 1 in front of my range strength number to know how much damage I'm really doing. So I have 137 with 2 zeros for HP, and then I have 137 for my ranged strength so that it's perfectly balanced to maximize damage per life. I even have a few other setups where this one isn't really balanced out. This one is, but I have to use a part that isn't as efficient as I would like it to be. This thing is just really nasty because being able to heal completely throws off how this entire equation works. Uh, your damage per life, or I guess I should say your health per life, isn't the same as just your base MS HP if you're doing healing, so you want to take that into account, especially if you're comparing health to like defense parts. The value of defense stats is a little bit more difficult to compare to the other two because defense just doesn't scale the same way HP and damage do. HP and damage are just flat additions, so the more that you already have, the smaller each new addition is proportionally. But defense works in the exact opposite way because, as we've already seen in the equation, let's say you already block 50% of the damage someone's dealing. You have your little defense bar and it's at 50. And you have another custom part that says, yeah, we'll add another 50 to the damage you block. This is now removing 100% of the guy's damage. So it's not doubling your defense by going from 50 to 100, or it's not like you're going from 150 to 200 or anything like that. You're going from half to absolute complete removal. And that's why there's just a hard cap at like 50, where you're not allowed to add more defense than that, even if you have the parts for it. Generally speaking, how you do the math, let's say we have a smaller number, one that the game would actually let you work with. So we'll say you remove 20 damage, right? So 100 minus 20 means the opponent is doing 80% of the damage they sent to you. If you remove another 8, well, you're going from, let's say you remove another 8, put this 80 right here. 80 minus 8 is, now they're doing 72% of the damage they sent to you, right? So this so-called 8% damage reduction is actually a 10% damage reduction because you already had 20 being removed, and we know 8 is 10% of 80. And this means this little 8 right here is what would be like, say you had, 150 ranged attack like we mentioned earlier, and then you add 15 to this. Oh, it's a plus 10% bonus. This little 8, which looks like it's hardly more than half of this big 15 right here, is actually equally valuable. You can't really make a perfectly general tier list for this not just because different characters are different, but because the stats themselves scale differently. So, like, the higher your damage or health stats already are, the smaller each addition you make to them is going to look, as opposed to the defense stats, where heavy armor is giving you a 20% increase in damage per life if you start from 40 in each defense stat, as opposed to if you start lower, it's going to be less than 20%. Overtune frame is going to add health instead, so it's the opposite effect. You know, it's 20% if you're not above 15,000 HP, but if you start lower, it might be even more than 20%, or it might go back down again if you get a lot of health from healing or something like that. Educational computer is really good. Composite frame is really good, even if you don't heal, but if you do heal, it's nice because it doesn't have the same problems Overtune frame might have. A tier, basically any other defense part if you're like using it correctly. Strengthened frames are basically all good. Damage programs up to level 4 are good. Spaced frame level 3 is pretty good if you remove a level 2 thruster's cost, because that means it's basically 200 HP per slot. And the level 2 thruster is actually the most efficient of the bunch, so that's good. B tier is basically overtune damage because it's less efficient and you need some A tier parts equipped first. Spaced frame is B tier because it's definitely worse than the level 3 and definitely better than the level 1 by a noticeable margin in either direction. And then new model frames are definitely less efficient than strengthened frames, but they're not bad, and sometimes they're just the only thing you have space for. And then at the very bottom you have level 5 damage programs, which are kind of bad. Uh, they're they're not good. And then spaced frame level 1 is also not good. Uh, you do have a case for the level 5 damage programs because maybe you're just playing a character with a whole bunch of slots and you're like, yeah, I have all these slots to use and I don't have all of these like actual, because you can only equip 8 parts even if you have slots to spare. So you might use one of those parts just for the bulk damage, even though the cost is terrible, but they're still not really good. And spaced frame level 1, it's not even a big part, so it doesn't even have that much going for it. It's just really bad.